So guys, we are back with another round of portfolio reviews, and I am so excited for this one. We've got some great looking portfolios on deck today, and we're gonna go under the hood to take a look at each one. We'll check out all the holdings, and I'll give my honest thoughts on what I like about these portfolios, as well as what I think could be improved. And as we're going through these, guys, keep in mind that I am by no means a professional. These are just my amateur opinions, so definitely take them with a grain of salt. And remember that at the end of the day, this is all just for fun. Now, real quick, before we get into it, if you wanna have your portfolio reviewed by me in one of these videos, just fill out the form I have linked in the description. And also, as we're going through these, leave a comment below and let me know your thoughts on these portfolios. I'd be curious to get your feedback as well. Now guys, getting into our first portfolio of the day, this one belongs to my friend Lars, who's somewhere on the newer side in his investing journey. Lars has been investing for somewhere between 1 and 5 years so far, and he has a relatively long time horizon. He hopes to live off his dividends sometime in the next 2 to 3 decades, so plenty of time to do some good compounding, and every single month Lars is investing $1,000 into his portfolio. That's pretty nice. Now in his notes here, Lars kept it short and sweet and said, "About me, I'm 26 years old and have been focused on dividend investing since I lost my butt on meme stocks 2 years ago." I get you, man. Sometimes that's a lesson you've got to learn the hard way, but I'm glad you found your way to dividend investing. But anyway, guys, now taking a look at Lars's portfolio, he shared it with us over here using my dividend portfolio tracking spreadsheet, which you can start using for free. There is a link to download this spreadsheet in the description of the video. I hope you check it out. But looking at this, guys, Lars is building what I think is a pretty great looking portfolio. It's valued at about $28,000, not too shabby, and so far he's up quite a bit. Across his entire portfolio, Lars is seeing about a 21% total return, which includes dividends. And speaking of dividends, the stats here are looking fantastic. He's got a 4.1% dividend yield, so that's a bit on the higher side. But with this, Lars is not neglecting his dividend growth. He still has about an 8% dividend growth rate. So I think these stats right here, when you combine them, are very well-balanced dividend stats. And looking at the dividend income breakdown, Lars is coming up on a really cool milestone. He's almost at a point where he's bringing in $100 in dividends per month. But anyway, now taking a look deeper under the hood into Lars's portfolio, we can see here he has 17 different holdings, 3 of which are ETFs. We have JEPI right here, we have SCHD, and we have VTI. So the remaining 14 are going to be individual companies. And I gotta say, I really like the breakdown of this portfolio. If we scroll over looking at the portfolio allocation, just starting with the ETFs, which once again are JEPI right here, SCHD, and VTI, we can see when we add up the allocation of just the 3 ETFs, it adds up to about 50%, pretty much exactly 50% of the total portfolio. And I like to see that. I really appreciate the fact that Lars has so much of his portfolio in ETFs. And furthermore, I really appreciate the fact that Lars seems to have a pretty nice balance of everything in his portfolio. And this kind of goes back to the dividend stats that we saw a moment ago, a 4% yield, an 8% dividend growth rate. I think there's some really good balance there. And when we look at how things are divvied up across the entire portfolio, Lars has, I think this is 8 different stocks that we would consider high yield. This makes up 37% of the portfolio. And then looking at the opposite end of the spectrum, Lars also seems to have quite the spread of dividend growth stocks with ABR, which is Arbor Realty Trust, coming in both departments. It's both a high yielding stock with an 11.3% yield and a nice dividend growth stock with an 11.4% 5-year dividend growth rate. So this one kind of double dips, but also in the dividend growth department, we have stocks like Broadcom, Kroger, Eli Lilly, Lowe's, NextEra Energy, SCHD is definitely in that category, Texas Instruments, and last but certainly not least, Visa. And overall, the portfolio is more heavily weighted towards growth. All of these stocks highlighted here make up 44.5% of the entire portfolio, which is a bit more than what we saw with the high yielders. So like I said, across the board, I think there is a really solid balance here between the high yielding stocks and also the dividend growth stocks with more of an emphasis on dividend growth. And that's something that I personally try and do in my portfolio. I like to think that I've got kind of the best of all worlds. I also have some high yielding stocks. I also have some dividend growth stocks and some of those stalwart sleep well at night stocks. And I see that same thing here in Lars's portfolio. And truth be told, I really don't have too many critiques here. I think Lars has done a really good job on the portfolio construction, and I like pretty much all of these holdings in the portfolio except for one of them. And if I had to pick something to change about this portfolio, it would be this one holding here, MPW. Now, MPW has been under its fair share of criticism these last couple of years due to a myriad of different challenges, with the most notable being its exposure to struggling tenants like Steward Health, which accounts for a pretty significant portion of MPW's revenue. Now, it's been pretty difficult for MPW to overcome these issues with Steward, and not only has it impacted their share price in a big way, but it's hurt the dividend as well. I mean, just in the last year, MPW has reduced their dividend not once, but twice, which to me is a huge scarlet letter on the company. And because of everything going on with it, it's not one that I personally would want to own. And just looking at your portfolio, I think there are plenty of better places to invest your money besides MPW. So I do think that one area you could improve this portfolio is by not having MPW in it. Otherwise though, Lars, my friend, you're building a great looking portfolio. And I am so glad that you found your way from meme stocks to dividend investing, and I'm really glad to see you making some gains. You're doing really well with this dividend stuff, so keep up the good work. You're on the right path, and thank you so much for letting me review your portfolio. Now guys, getting into our second portfolio of the day, this one belongs to my friend Jose, who is very new to the investing game. He's been investing for less than 1 year, and Jose has a very long time horizon. He doesn't plan to live off his dividends for another 30 plus years. So Jose's got a lot of great compounding ahead of him, and every single month Jose is investing somewhere between $100 to $150 into his portfolio. Now getting into his notes, I think this is very impressive. Jose says, I'm 19 years old and I started investing last year. And I want to pause right there for just a second and say that alone I think is so cool. Jose, I'm so stoked to see you investing from such a young age. I wish that I had the foresight that you have at your age, and I wish I would have done the same thing. But anyway, getting back to it, Jose says, I bought some high yield dividend stocks and it was not a good decision. After starting to learn more from watching your videos, I started selling some shares and buying others to change my focus toward dividend growth. I know I need to diversify a little more, but this is still something new for me. Now jumping over and looking at Jose's portfolio, he has shared it with us over here on Snowball Analytics, which outside of my free portfolio tracker that we saw in the last portfolio, Snowball Analytics is hands down my favorite portfolio tracker. It is an absolute beast, and Snowball Analytics gives you so much great insight into your portfolio. There's so much data it gives you, it's not even funny. And the cool thing about Snowball Analytics is that it's actually free to try out. There's a link in the description that gives you a 14-day free trial to Snowball Analytics, and I highly recommend you check it out because I know you're going to like it. But anyway, back over here looking at Jose's portfolio, it's currently valued at $1,045, and it looks like the dividend yield in this portfolio is about 3.35%. So not too shabby, a pretty moderate dividend yield. And if we scroll down, like Jose said, you know, he feels that he could be a little bit more diversified. And if we look at all these holdings, there are 6 different holdings in total, with the only ETF out of the bunch being SCHD, which makes up about 21% of the total portfolio, which means that roughly 79% of the remaining portfolio is in individual stocks. And looking at the breakdown of the portfolio here, you know, I think Jose's head is in the right place. You guys will have heard me talk about this before, but I typically talk about a good beginner dividend portfolio consisting of an ETF or some ETFs as the foundation, if not the entirety of the portfolio. I like to see, for someone who's just starting out, I think it makes sense to have ETFs be the main focal point of your portfolio. And then if you want to, you can sprinkle in a couple or a few individual stocks on top of that, if you feel the pull to do so. I know some investors do, and that's kind of what we're seeing play out here in Jose's portfolio. And looking at all of these holdings, or at least all of the individual companies, I think these are all solid companies. These are all very great dividend growers. Visa's a great dividend growth stock. Chevron's a dividend aristocrat. Realty Income is as well. NNN is also a dividend aristocrat with over 30 years of dividend growth. And then Starbucks actually earlier today just raised their dividend 7%. With that said though, even though I like all of these individual companies and own all of them except for this one myself, I'll be honest, I would like to see a higher weighting in ETFs here. I wish SCHD were a larger percentage of the portfolio, you know, or I wish there was a second ETF here. Like I think VU would be a great addition to this portfolio. I think, you know, if you bumped your SCHD weighting up to 25% and then added, you know, an S&P ETF, whether it's VU or a different one, make that 25% of the portfolio and then fill in the rest with these individual companies. I think that would be a much better breakdown. So that's one thing that I would change about this portfolio, especially considering you're still so new to investing. I think giving yourself that ETF safety net would be a good way to go. And I also think there's a little bit of room, believe it or not, to consolidate. Even though you've got, you know, only 6 holdings, I do think there's a little room to trim this down by 1. And I'm looking at these 2 companies right here. I think NNN and Realty Income are similar enough that I don't think you need to own both of them. They're very similar REITs. In fact, they have very similar tenants. You can see, looking at NNN's top tenants right here, it's very similar to what you'd find with Realty Income. And so because of that, I think you'd be fine owning just one of these companies. I don't know if it matters which one, but yeah, I don't think you need both of them, personally speaking. But overall, Jose, man, you're doing great. And like I said earlier, just the fact that you're even investing at 19 years old is so impressive. You're definitely not like most 19-year-olds out there. You're not even like most 25 or 30-year-olds. People my age, I'm 31. People my age still, this isn't even on their radar. I was talking to some of my friends about this last week. They have no interest still in investing. So just the fact that you're even doing this is going to put you light years ahead of other people your age and tons of people that are older than you. And this is one of my favorite things to see. Younger people with so much time on their side getting into investing, because that's one of the key components to this. That's one of the key ingredients to investing success, is having that time in the market. So the fact that you're giving yourself that, hats off to you, my friend. Keep up the good work, and thank you so much for letting me review your portfolio. All right, my friends, now getting into our third portfolio of the day. This one belongs to my friend Nina, who's been investing for somewhere between 1 and 5 years. And I actually think it's closer to like the 4 or 5 year mark, if I'm remembering correctly. And Nina still has a decently long time horizon. She doesn't plan to live off her dividends for another decade or two. And every single month, she is just loading the boat in her portfolio. She is investing a buttload, $3,000 to $5,000 every single month, which is very impressive. Now, Nina's got some good notes for us here. She says, my strategy is more so growth 80% and dividend 20%, because I feel that I'm still pretty young and I want to take advantage of the total returns right now and switch to dividends later. I'm 33 years old and plan to start living off dividends in about 12 years. I plan on retiring by 45 or 50 years old at the most if I have to push it. I used to have about 55 securities in my portfolio, but realized I was spreading myself too thin. I made some major cuts and narrowed it down to now 33. The portfolio value is sitting at around $430,000 in total value right now. My goal is to end up with about 22 to 25 solid securities for now, but here's where I'm at. And taking a look at Nina's portfolio, guys, she has shared it with us over here on Blossom. You can find her over here at Numbers with Nina. And let me tell you guys, I follow Nina over on Blossom, and she is a rock star. And Blossom is unlike any other platform, guys. It is the first and only social media platform designed specifically for investors. And on here, you can follow all of your favorite investors, including myself. I mean, you can see posts that I'm not putting up anywhere else besides here on Blossom. And you can also see my full portfolio here as well and keep up with all of my trades as they happen in real time. They just get automatically logged here in Blossom. But anyway, like I said, it is such a unique platform. It's a really cool place to be for investors. There's a great community of people on here, and I highly recommend you check it out. There's a link to download Blossom for free in the description of the video. But anyway, guys, back to Nina's portfolio over here. We're taking a look at all of her holdings. And if we scroll down, we can see that Nina has built quite the diversified portfolio. In total, she has 31 different holdings, so very well diversified. 2 of these holdings are mutual funds. If we scroll all the way up to the top here, we see VT Sachs, we see FZROX, which are both total market mutual funds. So those are 2 of Nina's largest positions. In addition to the mutual fund, she also has a few different ETFs. We see VU right there making up 16.5% of the portfolio. We see VUG at about 9% of the portfolio. Scrolling down, we see SCHD, and scrolling down even more, we see SPLG as well. So 2 mutual funds, 4 ETFs, which means that the remaining 25 positions are all individual companies. So like I said, very well diversified portfolio. And I will say one of the things that I like about Nina's portfolio, I mean, $430-something thousand at 33 years old is impressive in its own right, but I really appreciate the fact that 60.4% of the portfolio actually is in mutual funds and ETFs. So right off the bat, I think that's great. And as far as all of these individual stocks go, you know, there's really not one that I look at and think is a bad holding. There's a couple of them in here that I'm not super duper familiar with, like CrowdStrike, I don't really know that well. If we scroll down a little bit more, others like Palantir, I don't really know. Celsius, I know the company, but I'm not really too familiar with the stock. Coinbase, same thing. So I'm not all too familiar with some of these companies. So I probably can't speak on them all that well, but I do like what I was going to say. I do like the fact that when it comes to all of these individual positions, there is not a single one that is way too overly weighted or heavily weighted in the portfolio. I mean, the largest individual position is Realty Income at less than 4% of the total portfolio. And overall, like I've said a couple of times already, this portfolio is just very well diversified to the point where it's probably too diversified, if I'm being honest. And Nina, I will give you one easy way that you can do some more consolidating in your portfolio. I know you said you're, at 31 holdings now. You're trying to get it down into the low to mid 20s. This is going to be a very easy place for you to consolidate, okay? So here at the top, you have VU, 16.5% of the portfolio. But also, if we scroll down, you have SPLG, which is, if we tap into it, this is another S&P 500 ETF. So this would be one very easy way for you to consolidate. You don't need two different S&P 500 ETFs. You only need one. VU and SPLG are pretty much the same thing. So if I was you, I would get rid of one of these and just stick with one S&P 500 ETF. That's going to get rid of one of your holdings for you, take you down to 30. And furthermore, if you're going to own VU or SPLG, either of these S&P funds, I don't think you need to have VUG in your portfolio as well, seeing as 80% of that fund's holdings are already in VU. So there's quite a bit of overlap here between these two funds. So that would be another way that you can consolidate. That would take you down from 30 to 29 holdings, excuse me. And then I also think there could potentially be room to consolidate with these mutual funds here. So VT-SAX, VZROX, these are both total market funds. They're more or less the same thing. And I don't know, when it comes to all of these holdings that we see here, I'm not sure if this is all in one portfolio or if you've got a few different portfolios. Maybe you've got like your own brokerage account, then you've got maybe like a work 401k or an IRA or something like that. I'm not exactly sure what the portfolio breakdown is, but if you've got multiple portfolios, I can see why you'd have these different mutual funds, the VT-SAX and FCROX. But if for some reason this is all just in one account, then I don't think you need to have what is basically two of the same mutual fund. I think you can cut that down to one. But anyway, now moving on to your individual positions, I definitely think there is room to consolidate here. I mean, you're so well diversified with the mutual funds and the ETFs in your account. You've got just so much going on there that you don't need to have 25 different individual positions. You know what I mean? So I think another easy way for you to consolidate would be to look at all of these right here. I mean, pretty much from Palantir down, these are all less than 1% weightings in your portfolio. These are not meaningful positions for you by any means. So if you wanted to do some more streamlining, if you wanted to do some more consolidating, I would look at these. I would look at these positions that really are not meaningful ones and see where maybe you could cut some of these out of your portfolio. I think having a lot of these very small positions, less than 1% of the portfolio, creates some clutter in your portfolio and takes away from the time and attention that you could be spending on some of your more heavily weighted positions. If we scroll up here, you've got some that are pushing 3.5%, 4% of the portfolio. So I think if those are higher conviction picks for you, then probably more money is better invested in those than having a myriad of non-essential holdings. And furthermore, in addition to those, I would even consider looking at some of these other positions like Apple at 1.6%, Amazon, Microsoft, scrolling up even more. Maybe look at ones like Meta and potentially even Broadcom and maybe even think if those are worth having in your portfolio. I mean, all of the ones that I just mentioned there are some of the top 10 holdings in all of the funds you own. These are going to be the top 10 holdings in VU. They're going to be the top 10 holdings in, VT-SAX and the total market mutual fund. If those are already such large positions in those funds, then I do think there's an argument to be made for not owning them outside of the funds that you already have such large exposure to. Hopefully that makes sense. But anyway, those are just a few things that I would change about this portfolio. And overall, Nina, like whatever changes you make, if any at all, even if you don't do anything, you're absolutely crushing it. Okay, you very much inspire me to hit this stuff hard and keep grinding away at it because you have made just such incredible progress in your portfolio and in such a short amount of time. We've been investing for, around the same amount of time, but you've really taken this thing and ran with it. And it's so cool to see $400,000+ at 33 years old, like huge pat on the back to you. And it's been really cool to read your posts on Blossom and follow along with the journey. And thank you so much for putting it all out there. And I know you're starting a YouTube channel here pretty soon as well. So best of luck on that. I'm very excited to see what content you put out. I'll definitely be following along. And thank you so much for letting me review your portfolio as well. It was really cool to check it out. But anyway, guys, those were our 3 portfolio reviews of the day. And if you want to see a brutally honest review of my portfolio, then check out this next video right over here. In this one, we're going to go through my entire portfolio and as objectively as I can. I'll share the good, I'll share the bad, and I'll give it an honest and thorough review. So click right over here to check that out, and I'll see you in the next one.